yeah, so let's get through the house rules so that we can start with the event. Yeah, from the speaker, he has something he wants to tell you, his own narrative, so we go to his speaking. And additionally, we have...
Yeah. So, like when you said respecting the speakers, so we do have time for Q&A. So there's no problem with that. You're going to look at them, and Dr. Cornel West will question answer your questions. The event will end exactly at 10:30. So but you're out of here too. Unless you got money.
And something that we just want to point out, we recognize that everyone's coming in with different energies. It is a late event. We are going through different things like the student tuition. Also, students, there are things going on, but it's important that we take a minute to breathe and to center ourselves, just because we do have a clear purpose to be here, which is to talk about Ferguson racism in the media, and to, even though we all might have different agendas and different things we want to talk about, there are people here that want to hear Dr. Cornel West talk about these things. And we as students see this on the everyday, that this conversation hasn't been brought to our campus, and which is why we want to have this space, which is why student union absent work together collaborative to make sure that this conversation happens, and that we bring someone that can not only relate to us, but they can talk about it in a very honest way, and that we can relate to it. So before that, though, I would like to introduce Tiffany Lawson.
We are running short on time, and I usually have 15 minutes, and I have 5. So I'm going to condense it all. Those that do know me know I speak very fast. And those who don't know me, if you tell me I talk fast, I don't. I just listen to them.
Some students, a part of a white fraternity, decided to host an off-campus party that was entitled the Compton Cookout. And there was a black student union there that was highly upset about it. They were having study time and meetings in their library, and someone hung a full-blown noose on the bookshelf behind one of my friends, Grant, who took a picture of it, put it on Facebook, and it went viral. If you can Google it, you can YouTube it, you can probably search it on Facebook, look it on my page. After that took place, the UC Regents raised our tuition 34% in 1 year. I was at that rally and at that meeting telling them not to raise our tuition at UC San Francisco, and I got a phone call from a member of APSA here on campus that said someone carved a noose on the bathroom on Science Hill. I was at the time vice president of the Student Union Assembly. I later became president of the Student Union Assembly. That's fine. And thank you for that. Thank you. It was a long time ago, but thank you. And we hosted a series of events. And what I said to myself was, one, we need healing in this community. I'm also from Los Angeles, California, born and raised. And when I came up to this school with all the Warren kids and the deer and the trees and everything, it threw me off. And so I said to myself, to the community on my campus, which was at the time 2.6%, I heard it's 1.7 now, which is terrible. It was 2.6 out of 17,000 students. It's 1.7 now. It is getting lower. And I said to myself, we need to have a conversation about healing. And someone who I admire very much is Dr. Cornel West. And I told the student government, along with engaging education and a lot of the student organizations, we're going to bring this man to campus to have this conversation because one, it'll attract people who wouldn't normally come. And two, it'll help us bridge between the communities what we're doing here on campus to what's happening globally around the world. Some folks mentioned this already, but what happened to those 43 boys in Mexico when they were murdered is not okay. We still have not, since April 14th, found those girls who were taken in Africa. We still have not heard the grand jury announcement, not whether Darren Wilson will go to jail, but whether he'll even get to be presented to a grand jury to begin with, to be filed for murder, what he did to Mike Brown. It's not even just him going to jail. We got to the preliminary step, and he's probably not going to get that. He will be allowed to go continue doing whatever he's doing with his life, just like George Zimmerman. We also have to worry about the 27% increase. I was at the Regents meeting yesterday, giving my personal testimony as an alumni, because they raised our tuition 70% when I was here in the last 4 years. So we were there doing that too. We also have to worry about what's happening with the immigration announcement that just came out about an hour and a half ago. And I know that people are really excited about Obama taking action, as am I. I have met him myself. He actually, I shouldn't say this, I can say this. He actually just appointed me to the Commission on African American Excellence in Education. My black president to the death, but I know a lot of folks, and there might be people in this room whose parents have not been here for 5 years, who will be getting deported away from their children, which is not okay. This is a nation built off of immigrants. This is a nation that believes in democracy. It's a nation that believes in higher education, and tearing families apart is not okay. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. So the conversations I want you all to have and take away from this is not just, oh, E Squared brought Dr. Cornel West to campus. It is, Dr. Cornel West came to campus. I got my picture, my selfie, my face, my autograph thing or whatever. And after he leaves, I got involved in student organizing on campus. And after he leaves, I went to ask more questions about how I could be more involved in the community. After he leaves and when I graduate, I'm still finding out how can I be more involved in the community on campus. And for the professors and administration in the room, you are able to use this as a resource here at this university. It's an amazing school. I'm so glad I went here. I'm so honored to be here. Thank y'all for having me. I will be facilitating Q&A and speaking at the end. So after he leaves, don't just walk out because I got something to talk about too. And I came from DC. And the last thing I want to say is this. The reason why I admire Dr. Cornel West so much, I have an example. I was in Ferguson a couple of weeks ago, and I decided to save all of my money. With all the organizing that I've done, I should say, after the hate crimes happened here on campus, we won 3 things. We won our path, we won our path. We also, they never rehired our African American Resource Center director. They is in the administration here on campus. And so I told them, not only do we want you to hire that person, we want to be a part of the hiring process. And I don't want to be a part of a commission or a think tank. I want to have a vote on that. So we want to appoint our person to be a part of that. That was the second thing we won. And the third thing we won was the chancellor decided to cut funding for SIO programming here on campus, and we fought to get that restored. And that was successful also. So those are the things we want you to do. This is not just an event to hear him speak. It's also, you can do real change after this. How do you get involved to be able to do that? So this is what I want to tell about Dr. West. And also I have your bio, and I'll do that in a second. So I was in Ferguson, and there was a huge rustle and tussle at a giant convention center when some students had got upset because there were leaders who were coming into Ferguson who were just there for show. Just there because they wanted the media to see them, just there because they wanted to be involved in what was happening in black politics, and they thought it was their obligation to be there, as I did. African American woman, identify as a black woman, and I said it was my obligation to be there, so I went. And Dr. West got on stage in front of maybe, how many people? 2,000 people that were there in the room maybe? And got to the microphone. Mind you, it's a lot of older folks on stage. They didn't have really a lot of young people on stage talking, which, to tell you all, most of the organizing and the leadership in Ferguson right now are people who are between the ages of 19 and 24. So they weren't on stage talking. So Dr. West got up on the microphone, everybody clapping because they all know who Dr. West is. He gets up there, he's dressed in his suit, let go for justice, and he said, I didn't come here to talk or lecture y'all because everything that I've wanted to say has been said. I came here to get arrested. And everybody was like, wow, woo! And everybody clapping, yelling, screaming, and I'm in the back, like all the way to the top, right? Because they don't know me and I ain't got VIP access like that, but here I do. And he said, I came here to get arrested. I didn't come here for none of this extra stuff. And everybody was clapping. He gave his, 5-minute talk. He left. The next You actually stayed in the same hotel as me. We don't know this. We stayed in the same hotel. And it was maybe 2 a.m. in the morning, and Dr. West comes strolling in after all of his meetings, and everybody's going to bed. First thing in the morning, we get to the police station in Ferguson, where the one that you all have been seeing all the memes about. Dr. West got arrested the next morning. And I was like, damn, he came and said what he did, what he said he was going to do. Like, he really wasn't here for nothing else, but he came to make sure that he was standing in solidarity organizing in Ferguson. He didn't come as an outsider saying, how can we agitate the police officers? He came and said, people have been getting arrested. I am here to do my diligence as a human being in the beloved community, as a human, a part of the humanity sphere, to get arrested instead of another of these people. And he showed up, got arrested. And I was like, well, damn. What am I doing with my life? I didn't get arrested. I went home. But what actually I didn't. I donated 300 books to the students there because they had breakfast and books with the kids. And the American Federation of Teachers donated 300 black books to those students that are there. So, now I get to introduce them. Thank y'all for that. Dr. Cornel West is a prominent and provocative democratic intellectual. He is a professor of philosophy at Christian Practice at Union Theological Seminary and professor at Princeton University. He is also taught at Yale, Harvard, and the University of Paris. Hopefully, one day UC Santa Cruz. I know it doesn't really fit in the list, but maybe we can make it happen. So, Dr. West graduated magna cum laude from Harvard in 3 years and obtained his MA and PhD in philosophy at Princeton. He has written 20 books and has edited 13 of them. Though he is, you said, wow, you're supposed to know this. Though he is best known for his classic Race Matters and Democracy Matters and his memoir, Brother West, Living and Loving Out Loud, which I had, he signed when I was here in 2010. His most recent book is the highly anticipated Black Prophetic Fire, get that book, which is due to be released in October, which already happened, and is already receiving critical acclaim. Dr. West is a frequent guest on The Bill Maher Show, Colbert Report, CNN, C-SPAN, and Democracy Now! He made his film debut in The Matrix, and was all the Matrix fans, make some noise? And was the commentator on the official trilogy released in 2004. He has also appeared in over 20 documentaries and films, including Exclaim Life, Call and Response, Sidewalk, and Stand. Lastly, he has made 3 spoken albums, including Never Forget, collaborating with Prince, Jill Scott, Andre 3000, Talib Kweli, KRS-One, yeah, they in the building too, and KRS-One, and his spoken word interludes were featured on Terrence Blanchard's voice? Who? Blanchard, thank you. You got the script too, I appreciate you. Which won the grand prize in France for the best jazz album of the year 2009. The Cornel West Theory's Second Rome, Raheem DeVaughn, Grammy-nominated Love and War masterpiece, and most recently on Bootsy Collins' The Funk Capital of the World. In short, Dr. West has a passion to communicate at a vast variety of publics in order to keep alive the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., a legacy of telling the truth and bearing witness to love and justice. I need you all to give me a huge round of applause and welcome to Dr. West.
Back at University of California, Santa Cruz. I want to thank Engaging Education and Student Media for facilitating my coming. And as you can see, I am in no rush. I believe in moving with the Spirit. I want to salute my dear sister Tiffany Lofton. Not just brilliant, not just committed, but also having such a wonderful spirit about her. Give it up again for sister. I'm just blessed to engage in such a high quality conversation with the students of color. It was largely black, but there was some brown and others as well, and I was just deeply moved by the candor, deeply moved by the words that put forward in that conversation, not just in regard to Ferguson, but also in regard to the ways in which vicious legacy of white supremacy still operates even here in Santa Cruz. And I do look forward after our dialogue together to making a direct beeline to the humanities building. Of the old school. Oh yes, we still, some of us are still on fire. Still on fire. When I think of University of California, Santa Cruz, I think of my dear sister Angela Davis. In fact, we're going to be celebrating her in Florida in June, her wonderful sister, Fania. But I also think of David Hoy, who was my very dear brother. He was a philosopher who taught many years here. Hayden White, of course, is a towering intellectual, taught many, many years here as well. Patricia Rose was my dear sister, who taught here, been around for a little while now. But you remember Sister Tricia, Gina Dent, she's still around. Tell her I send my love and respect. Absolutely. But I want to begin on a personal note, because anytime you talk about any particular form of evil, it could be vicious legacies of male supremacy, it could be vicious legacies of empire and imperialism, it could be vicious legacies of anti-Muslim hatred, anti-Jewish sensibility. We've come to talk in some ways about the vicious legacy of white supremacies and the ways in which it ties into our neoliberal capitalist regime at the moment. But anytime you talk about it, it's very important we get on a personal note, because in the end, it's like the conclusion of a practical Aristotelian syllogism. And the conclusion is not a proposition, the conclusion is not an abstraction, the conclusion is, what kind of life are you going to decide to live in the face of these forms of evil coming at you? That's the fundamental questions. And so I want to begin by just acknowledging that I am who I am because somebody loved me. Somebody cared for me. Somebody attended to me. All the accolades and all the titles, for me, they just sounding brass and tinkling cymbal when it comes to the fact that the most magnificent thing about my life is that I was the second son of Irene and Clifton West. And I'm unapologetic about that. If you ever had a chance to meet either one, you know what I'm talking about. I'll never be the man my father was. He died 20 years ago. If I could be one half of the human being he was, I would not have lived in vain. And my mother, Irene, teacher and principal, she got an elementary school named after her in Sacramento, California, where I grew up, the Irene B. West Elementary School. She's still going strong at 82. But I mention that because I'm just acknowledging my own specific sense of what it is to be a particular human being coming out of a tradition beginning with family. I'm also a product of Shiloh Baptist Church, Reverend Willie P. Cook. And those were the days when the pastors were not CEOs, they were pastors. Wasn't a mega church, but we had a lot of mega love. Yeah. Wasn't a mega church, but we had a lot of mega courage. Reverend Cook never received one anniversary gathering for money directed to him. He wouldn't accept it. We had no building fund at all because he took care of the building himself. He was also a carpenter like his personal Savior, Jesus. And most importantly, he had a prison ministry because he was concerned about especially the precious young brothers and sisters who were caught within a criminal justice system that from the very beginning 400 years, in some way has been criminal when it comes to black people. This is not new. Come from a people that have been terrorized and traumatized and stigmatized for 400 years. Ferguson is the tip of an iceberg. Keep that in mind in terms of context. And it's true, on to my educational institution where I met magnificent people at Harvard, John Rawls, Willie Putnam, Princeton, and Richard Rorty, and Sheldon Wolin, and then, of course, now in New York City at Union Seminary. And I do plan to die there. I plan to go down swinging. Muhammad Ali and Ella Fitzgerald. Don't mean a thing. I ain't got that swing. But it has everything to do with engaging education in regard to white supremacy that begins on chocolate sides of town, or chocolate sides of the nation, but it takes a moral and spiritual stand so it spills over the poor people, working people in all parts of the nation and the world, to the elderly, the widow, the fatherless, the children across the board, gay brothers, lesbian sisters, trans, across the board. There's a broad sensitivity in terms of what? Being fundamentally committed to the quest for unarmed truth. And the condition of truth is always to do what? Allow suffering to speak. There is no truth when it comes to history and existential things. If suffering is not speaking, if voices are not being lifted. Of course, I come from a people, a black people, who our anthem is what? Lift every voice. It's not lift every echo. It makes a difference, doesn't it? It makes a big difference. One of the reasons why we haven't had enough moral outrage, holy anger, and righteous indignation around Ferguson is too many folk just want to be successful, and to be successful in America is to be well-adjusted to injustice. No, don't tell me how successful you are. I want to know what you're faithful to. What are you using your success for? Got so many peacocks walking around. Look at me, I got so much money. Look at me, I got access to power. Look at me, I got status. And I say peacocks strut because they can't fly. Oh, I come from a people of eagles. Eagles can fly with style and with dignity. Some of them fly with a little syncopation, a little rhythm, but they keep watch on those below, those catching hell. Don't brag about being the black person who broke the glass ceiling. Are you concerned with the ones locked in the basement? Ask a question. I'm not against success, but it becomes idolatrous. It becomes a form of moral blindness. It becomes a form of narrow respectability if you're not keeping track of those who are disrespected and dishonored. And yes, Ferguson is a fork in the road, no doubt about it. It's a pivotal moment. Why? We don't know exactly why. It's just when you got young leaders like Ashley Yates and Tefpo, and Alexis Templeton, and Tori Russell, Brother Wiley, Sister Jonetta, we can go on and on and on. They've been in the streets now for 3.5 months. Every day. Do you know what that means to organize and mobilize in the face of the repressive apparatus of the U.S. nation state and still stand with dignity? Ooh, that's serious business. And that's a salute to your generation. That's a salute to your generation. So many folk who are losing hope in the younger generation. There's so many folk who are thinking, oh my God, they have been taught for the last 40 years that to be human is to be titillated and stimulated rather than caring and nurturing. They've been taught for the last 40 years that people sacrifice for you all, just for you all to find some slot within a neoliberal capitalist regime that is obsessed with three processes: financialize, privatize, and militarize. Financialize, privatize, militarize. 1% of the population, only 42% of the wealth. It's a moral disgrace. Almost 40% of the black children, brown children, red children living in poverty. 22% of all children in the richest nation of the history of the world living in poverty. That's an ethical abomination. Thank God, Ferguson, as symbol of younger generations, saying, you know what? As Fannie Lou used to say, we tired of being tired. It's time to throw down in the name of justice. In the name of truth, we gonna make a difference. And the first step is always what? Something that you don't see highlighted in the educational system, and especially in higher education. It's called courage. Courage is the enabling virtue. All the other virtues are empty without courage being in place. And of course, what is the primary in the name these days of institutions of learning in neoliberal capitalist America? To be smart. It's the highest compliment. Oh, she's smart. Oh, he's smart. I said, that's all you can say. A lot of Nazis who were smart. A lot of white supremacists, homophobes, male supremacists who are very smart. I've never been impressed by smartness. I'm not promoting stupidity now. No. There's a wonderful line in the great Du Bois' classic of 1903, Souls of Black Folk, where he says, what happens when America becomes a dusty desert of dollars and smartness? No, we're talking about being wise, being compassionate, and being courageous. A lot of folk in Silicon Valley are very smart, but wrestling with spiritual malnutrition, emptiness of the soul, or moral constipation. Where they know what's right, but it just won't flow because they're so upset. They know what's right, but need a little moral laxative for things to flow. Because they're obsessed with money and status and position, competition, and for everybody else to think they're smart. You get this among too many people of color these days. Oh, they think I'm articulate. Oh, you think that's a compliment? They're talking about you and Jamal and Letitia. They contrasting you with folk who they think are not articulate. They're going to tease you out as the exception and reinforces a whole mainstream discourse of dishonoring black people. No, we're talking about eloquence. Cicero and Quintilian define eloquence as what? Wisdom speaking. The fundamental difference. People used to say with Cicero give a speech. Everybody say, oh my God, Cicero's so smart. Give attention to himself. Demosthenes give a speech. Let's march. It's a qualitative difference. You give a speech that's directed to folk wrestling with who they are. It's not about you. You're just a vehicle. You're just a conduit. And all of us cracked vessels. All of us fall finite and fallen. Of course, I'm a Christian, so my whole life is just trying to love my crooked neighbor with my crooked heart. I won't get too religious here, but I just want the world to know I was a gangster before I met Jesus, and now I'm a gangster proclivity. I'm just being candid with you. I know there's some revolutionary Muslims like Malcolm X and many others. Magnificent agnostics, magnificent atheists, magnificent Buddhists like Bell Hooks, revolutionary Buddhists. Oh, yeah. Brother Mahatma Gandhi, revolutionary Hindu, and Betkar with the precious dollar people, so-called untouchable brothers and sisters, revolutionary Buddhists. You can go across the board. But it starts with courage. In some ways, it's best enacted in the words of the great W.B. Du Bois. Every time I say his name, I want to be silent. Lived 95 years. Almost every minute, every ounce of his energy trying to tell the truth about the humanity of people of color, especially black folk. Du Bois says 4 questions I've been wrestling with all of my life. This is in his novel, 1957. He was 89 years old when he published this novel. He said, all my life I've been wrestling with 4 things to do with Ferguson. First question is, how does integrity face oppression? How does integrity face oppression? Second question is, what does honesty do in the face of deception? Third query, what does decency do in the face of insult? And that last query, how does virtue meet brute force? We had long dialogues with the young brothers and sisters in Ferguson when I had to steal away and raising those questions. And I had a magnificent moment actually, right about 11:30. I was talking to Brother Sekou, who's one of the magnificent leaders there as well. In the hotel, same hotel we were in. I don't know if you were in that, no, but it's good to know you were there. But I said, Brother Sekou, my spirit is restless. Let's go to the spot where Brother Michael Brown was executed and murdered. 12 o'clock at night we go, about 4 of us. We all holding hands, and I'm right in the middle of praying. Then the car comes around the corner, pulls over. It's Brother Michael Brown's mama. She said her spirit was restless too. She just wanted to drive by to the space where her precious child, her precious baby, as big and beautiful and handsome as he was, he's still a baby in the eyes of his mama. She just wanted to drive. So, oh no, Sister Leslie Maxwell, come on in the press circle. She came right on in, kept praying. Then we had dialogue for almost 45 minutes. She said, oh, I heard the speech that you gave, Brother West, when you talking about integrity, honesty, decency, and virtue. I said, yeah, that's Du Bois. That mean that's Du Bois. I'm not gonna lie, but it's a blessing to be a conduit for it. You see, how, in a context of overwhelming catastrophe, because when you talk about the legacy of white supremacy, we're not talking about the black problem. There's no such thing as a black problem. It's catastrophe visited on black people. No such thing as a brown problem, Latino problem. Catastrophe visited on precious Latino brothers and sisters. Same is true with working class people. Same is true with Jewish brothers and sisters in Jew-hating contexts. Same is true with Palestinians under vicious Israeli occupation. Anybody who has catastrophe visited on them is not their problem. It's very important to get the framework right. Or you end up in a truncated discourse, deodorized discourse, highly sanitized discourse that doesn't want to come to terms with the suffering. And so you end up doing what? What America's done for the last 40 years. You trivialize the suffering of poor people. You trivialize the suffering of black people. How can you account for the quadrupling of black people in the new Jim Crow? You all know Michelle Alexander's powerful text. A quadrupling without an unbelievable level of callousness and indifference toward their humanity, toward their plight, toward their predicament. The great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel used to say, indifference to evil is more evil than evil itself. because it becomes a whole way of life, a whole mode of being in the world. You keep moving and acting as if your destiny is not inextricably interwoven with the destiny of those who are vulnerable, who are politically weak, whose humanity is rendered invisible. And of course, Brother Malcolm used to say, chickens come home to roost. You're going to reap what you sow. You can't have kids 40% living in poverty and think that somehow you're going to have a strong democratic experiment down the road. No way. No way. You can't have a Wall Street dominated government and think that Main Street somehow is not sooner or later going to be outraged. Like you're not going to have drones dropping bombs on innocent people and innocent children and people not responding in some way, sometimes very ugly, not to be justified, but to always keep the context in place. You can't have a massive surveillance state that Brother Edward Snowden points out. And Sister Chelsea Manning points out in jail right now. With the U.S. nation state. Thank you so very much, my dear brother. Even though I'm not a water drinking brother, I'm cognac drinking, but I do drink water. You can't bring that Kvassier out for me, that's cool. That's all right. That's fine. I drink it in the name of Jesus because I'm a free. I'm a free-willing Black Baptist. Back to the point. We're talking about massive surveillance. Phones tapped. Torturers walking free. Wall Street executives walking free. Not one gone to jail, engaged in crimes of a high order. Market manipulation, insider trading, fraudulent activities. But all they got to do is just call the White House. That's what Jamie Dimon does. He just call the White House and say, yeah, look like we got caught, but I'll just pay some money. It's a tax write-off. I'll just pay some money. So nobody would take responsibility. Then you say we're a nation of rule, under rule of law. Law and disorder. But disorder and lawlessness begins at the top. Yes, it's on the street too. Yes, it's on the block. But you got to start at the top. That sets the tone. And what you see in Ferguson is the third generation of precious young Black brothers and sisters who have been economically abandoned, socially neglected, and dealing with the raw violence of the most powerful nation state in the history of the world. The history of the world. And it's a war. And I use that language quite explicitly. It began as a war against drugs. It became a war against poor people, especially Black and brown. 62% of them in jail, soft drug offenses. 12% vanilla brothers and sisters get high regularly. 12% of Black brothers and sisters get high regularly. 65% of convictions, chocolate. That's a racist criminal justice system. People always go, oh, Brother West, you get on TV and use that harsh language. Why don't you be more polite? No, when you love folk, you can't stand the fact that they're treated unjustly. You loathe the fact that they're treated unfairly. You don't say something, the rocks are going to cry out. I don't have nothing against polite manners in the designated context. But when it comes to the public context of telling the truth and allowing suffering to speak, when it comes up unapologetic love, we don't have enough love for Jamal and Letitia. Beginning in the Black community itself, and then spilling over in higher places, which means they end up oftentimes not loving themselves enough, disrespecting each other, devaluing each other, dishonoring each other. And the police pick that up figure they can treat Jamal and Letitia like they're less than human and get away with it because there's no accountability. None at all. The police culture of silence. When they shoot Oscar Grant, they shoot Clinton Allen in Dallas, they shoot Kenneth Chamberlain in White Plains. We can go on and on and on. Shoot Kanisha and so forth, and get away with it. Which means what? Which means very much like Wall Street executives. We do what we want to do. That's the very opposite of what democracies are supposed to be about. Democracies are first and foremost an attempt to curtail arbitrary power, especially arbitrary power on behalf of elites vis-a-vis the public interest. And one of the challenges of your generation, we talk about this in Ferguson. I don't know how many of you had a chance to read the war cry by the Tef poet. It's powerful. Powerful. He says, you know, if you treat we young black folk in a fascist-like way, sooner or later, that treatment is coming to your house. It's the canary in the mine. You think this somehow is not connected to you. But people feel they can get away with it, they can get away with it. You say, well, we've got our politicians in place. Well, Congress, what has it got now? Congress is less popular than cockroaches. 7% of Americans think highly of Congress. Why is that so? They got good reason. Because so much of it is legalized bribery and normalized corruption. It's big money. Dictating the framework in which where debates take place. Even to become a politician, you have to be a superb fundraiser. Big, big money. Where else do you go? What about religious institutions? They used to be much more prophetic than before, but they've become so commodified and commercialized and marketized. So even the churches there in Ferguson, a few, but you'd be surprised, especially in those private meetings. I don't want a lot of confidentiality to be suspended, but let me tell you something about the cowardliness of so many of these religious leaders. They were fundamentally concerned about the money flow to their churches rather than the plight and predicament of the folk who've been mistreated. Why is that so? Because most of the young folk themselves are unchurched. They're not in the church. They're unmosqued, they're unsynagogued, they're not connected to any religious institution at all. Why? Because they look back and see those enterprises as businesses. They say, well, if it's just a business, we can deal with the businessmen and women. Why don't you just be honest about it? I want to be candid about your religious institution is primarily a market-driven institution for the flow of money to your building fund and your car rather than prison ministry and dealing with the poor folk in your community. Martin Luther King Jr. turns over in his grave as a revolutionary Christian that he was. Where are the wave of churches building on my legacy? Of course, these days, Brother Al Sharpton is often perceived as the great civil rights leader building on the legacy of Martin King. If you ask Brother Sharpton, I've known Sharpton for 30 years, I love that brother, but I tell the truth about that Negro too. He comes running into Ferguson doing what? Representing the Obama administration. Now, Obama administration of Obama today put forward executive order. I think it's a beautiful thing. I love my Latino brothers and sisters. I wish that he had included health benefits. I wish that he included the parents. I wish that he really straightened his back out and took a stand rather than being fearful of Fox News and the right wing. They're going to hate you anyway. But he took a step. He took a step. Fine, he took a step. But how many federal prosecutions has he put forward for the thousands of black men and women who have been killed by police since 2008. Not a mumbling word. What's the problem, my dear brother president? I love him too, a black brother. I want to defend him against the white supremacists and folk who lying on him. But when he doesn't come through in the name of truth and justice, you got to have tough love. See, it's not just about you, Mr. President. It's about the very folk down on the ground who's catching hell, to use my language. You see, where have the bully pulpits been in regard to the militarizing of the police department? Took place 4 years ago. Who supported it? Congressmen and women, including most of the black caucus, including the Obama administration, including Eric Holder, black brother. Now you act like you're so upset. No, you helped facilitate it. Money flowing to the Defense Department and the arms industry because it's big profits in huge arms, even when it makes Ferguson look like Baghdad. And from my lips to your ears, in the next few days, there's a good chance we'll see explosion. And it won't just be in Ferguson. It's going to be all around the country. And we're going to see the highly militarized weapons in urban cities across the country. There's a good chance of that. And we have to be very clear about who takes responsibility for that. Because it escalated in the last 4 years. Where was the truth telling? Brother Sharpton, love you when you engage in truth telling. But it's hard to be prophetic when you are so intimately linked to the head of the American empire. You say quite explicitly, no black person has any right at all to say something critical about a black president, which you've said over and over again. That's about that's the nadir, the low point of any tradition concerned about truth-telling. Historically, black people have been the most anti-war people in the last 60 years. Now we're the most pro-war because we are flag wavers rather than cross bearers. Wave the flag no matter what the president is doing. 4 Americans assassinated with no due process, no judicial review whatsoever. Read black newspapers. Do you see a critique? Not at all. Of course, when I put it forward, I always do it with a smile, because I figure sooner or later you're going to reap what you sow anyway. Oh, Brother West is un-American. No, I'm not un-American. I'm anti-injustice in America. That's not un-American. I'm anti-injustice in Ethiopia. I'm anti-injustice in Guatemala. I'm anti-injustice in Brazil. I'm anti-injustice in Russia. I'm anti-injustice in Siberia, but I don't spend too much time there. It's too cold, too cold. But it's a matter of being consistent. And let us be very clear about the multi-level character of the war against poor black and brown youth. Historically, the fundamental form of transcendence for black people has been music. For over 200 years and 244 years of barbaric white supremacist slavery, it was against the law for black people to learn how to read and write. You're not going to get a black Shakespeare in a context where it's against the law to read or write. You're going to get something like the spirituals. Creative, artistic genius of a non-literate people. But the quality of the music makes a fundamental difference. When I was coming along in the 60s and 70s, it wasn't just about Martin. It was also about Curtis Mayfield, William Winter. I had a choice of colors. It was Nina Simone, to be young, gifted, and black. Mississippi, goddamn. A blackbird, genius Nina Simone. It was Aretha singing Respect. It was Marvin Gaye asking what's going on, who really cares. We can go on and on. It was also groups who sang in harmony. The Delphonics, the Dramatics, the Enchantments, and the Whispers. Played instruments, Ohio Players, Lakeside, Charles Wright, Watts 103rd Street Rhythm Band, Negro genius from Vallejo named Sly Stone. Yeah. Young people these days, especially in the last 20 years, part of the spiritual and cultural war against young people is what? No access to the instruments. Arts programs gone in the school. Gone in the school. When's the last time you heard group singing harmonize among the younger generation? The way Manhattan sound when Gerald wants to stretch out. Or the way Main Ingredients sound. Don McPherson, before he died, then later on, Cuba Gooding sang. O.J., Marvelettes, Sheila, Wanda Hutchinson of the Emotions. Y'all know some of these folks? That's harmony. That's voices blending. You have to learn how to listen. See, in the 1990s, what happens is the oligarchs and the plutocrats took over the recording and the radio and the video and live performance, and they no longer wanted harmonizing voices. They wanted aggressive solo voices, and usually not tied to high quality, energizing, empowering, caring, nurturing music. So part of the spiritual and the cultural war against young folk is to try to push to the margins what you get in the voice of a David Ruffin. Other Temptations. His brother died last night, Jimmy Ruffin, who sang What Becomes of the Broken Heart, one of the great songs. What do you find in the voice of a David Ruffin? A militant tenderness. Not say my name, say my name. His oldest record, try a little tenderness. Oh, his baby face with Ronnie. Tender Ronnie. Tenderness is empowering. It's the raw stuff of what it is to be a freedom fighter. If you can push the tenderness, push the sweetness out. Where is the tenderness and the sweetness in the music these days? Under the oligarchs and plutocrats. So you got some artists who can make $1 million and can't sing in tune. You won't mention any names. I'm trying to be Christian up here. Because it's not about singing in tune anymore. Much as I love Beyonce, she is the greatest entertainer of his generation. I salute my dear sister. She's magnificent in many ways. But to go from Aretha to Beyonce, that's a hell of a move. Why? Because when Aretha comes out on the stage, she's coming out of a tradition of dealing with a legacy of white supremacy. She knows she's got to empower, care, nurture, caress, be tender, be sweet, and be gentle, even as she can be funky. And I've seen Beyonce only once. She moves a long time and got a lot to move. As I told Brother Jay-Z, my dear brother, who I've been critical of, but I love that Negro too. And Lil Blue. How much tenderness, sweetness, and gentleness do you get in all those mechanical moves that go on and on and on? I could be wrong. These are questions. But that's part of the spiritual war. If you can create a younger generation that is distant from its history, that is convinced that the only way of being alive is to be titillated and stimulated, headed toward a mainstream of an unjust status quo, that doesn't have music and other cultural forms that allow for the tenderness, sweetness, and gentleness to feed into their struggle for justice, what then do you end up with? You end up with folk who are eager to be part of an unjust status quo, and then to celebrate in their change. To celebrate in the change that they have, as if they're really free. Oh, I got that place in that neighborhood. Oh, I've got this economic status. Oh, I'm at this grand university. I'm really free now. And I say, get off the crack pipe. No, you just privileged. Don't confuse privilege with being free. If you're really free, use your privilege. Don't mock around being somehow so guilty and paralyzed and debilitated because you're privileged. Use your privilege for something bigger than you, for a cause. Democracy, equality, empowerment of more people. But that's not freedom. Freedom is something that cuts so much deeper than that. And it's connected to an attempt to create a social freedom so that the poor here, all parts of the country, and of course this is global, are able to gain access, jobs with a decent wage, decent health care, decent housing, a sense of shaping their destinies in their cultures so that their spirits have a certain dignity, both to them and others around them. Oh, Brother West, that's so utopian. That's naive. No, it's the very thing that keeps people going. And I'm going to end on a blue note, because you can't talk about Ferguson, you can't talk about the legacy of white supremacy, and you certainly can't talk about the ways in which corporate media market-driven is interested in the truth or serious compassion to poor people without talking about the blues. You cannot be a long-distance freedom fighter in this country and anywhere else without having a blues sensibility. Because the blues is about catastrophe. And what are you going to do in the face of catastrophe? So B.B. King said, nobody loves me but my mama, she might be driving too. That's catastrophe. That's like Sophocles' Antigone. All the forces in the world against you, you thought your mama would come through. Turns out, she jiving too. What you gonna fall back on? BB, what you gonna do, King of the Blues? Well, I got a tradition that allows me to stand with dignity, to pull out Lucille. I learned Lucille in Gut Bucket, Jim Crow Delta, Mississippi. That's where I learned how to play that guitar. Because that's all folk had, with just their voices and the guitar they created, and a memory, a subversive memory, and a commitment to integrity, honesty, decency, and virtue. All I can do is raise my voice and sing. And maybe that voice will ricochet across so that, lo and behold, people will be able to straighten their backs up and be freedom fighters, the doctors, the lawyers, the pharmacists, or lead trade unions, or tell the truth about homophobia. How can I use what I have in the face of catastrophe? Compassion in the face of catastrophe. Terrorism, American terrorism has been a catastrophe up to Ferguson. What has been the response, the dominant response of black folk? Created black Al-Qaeda? No. And that's a very important question. You terrorized folk for 400 years, you think somebody would have come up with the idea and say, you know what? Time for us to learn the game. Frederick Douglass didn't believe that, did he? Sojourner Truth didn't believe that. Henry Tubman didn't believe that. Martin King didn't believe that. In the face of terrorism, what did they do? They said, we want freedom for everybody. We don't want to terrorize the folk who terrorize us. We don't want to gangsterize the folk who gangsterize us. We take a moral and spiritual stand that's higher than the thugs coming at us. How do you channel that rage into love and justice rather than hatred and revenge? Oh, that's a fundamental question. And that's what the blues is fundamentally about. That's why the blues idiom is the idiom of the whole world, because the whole world got the blues when impending ecological catastrophe and possible nuclear catastrophe. And the catastrophe is connected to economic inequality of capitalism as well as domestic violence, a host of other kinds of catastrophes on sisters of all colors, on and on and on. What you gonna do in the face of catastrophe? Will you have the courage to make a quest for integrity, honesty, decency, and virtue? Ferguson, 2014. Now the spotlight is on the catastrophe that America cannot deny. And a lot of folks surprised. Oh my God, I didn't know the Negroes were treated like that by the police. What bubble you been living in? What silo you been living in? Get out of your vanilla suburb and get a sense of what the world is. Get out of it. You're going to have to learn something from black folk. Because black folk have been on intimate terms with terrorism and trauma and stigma, intimate terms with catastrophe, and at our best, here comes John Coltrane. Loves the free. The giant steps, interstellar space. John, you know catastrophe better than anybody. How do you muster the courage to continue to engage in the kind of truth-telling in your sound when the critics tell you you don't really know how to play because you're playing too fast in giant steps and the notes are coming out so quick they can't transcribe it on the page? See what I got to play, what I got to play? I'm following Charlie Parker. I'm following Mary Lou Williams. I'm following Sarah Vaughan. I'm following Billy Eckstine. They taught me to be myself. I'm following Thelonious Monk. They taught me to be myself. The critics got to catch up. Blues sensibility. Catastrophe facing all of us now. Can we be long distance runners? Let us keep a focus on the tradition that has unleashed unbelievable courage, vision in the face of white supremacy. And let us hope that Ferguson becomes a litmus test so we can see that love and justice in the face of that vicious and ugly American terrorism. Thank you all so very much. Well, we certainly want unity, but we don't want unanimity. What I mean by that is we need a coming together, a coalescing. this is people of all colors, in the name of moral and, for me, spiritual values. There's no doubt about that. So when we talk about Ferguson, it's a beautiful thing after we saw in Ferguson. You got a whole beautiful slice of white brothers and sisters there all the time. That's crucial. That's a beautiful thing. And they got a lot of cousins who got other views about that. That's part of the challenge too. But they're standing on moral ground. They're standing on spiritual ground. And that's part of what is the ground for the kind of unifying and coalescing that takes place. In the same way, black folk, white folk, and others need to be behind our Latino brothers and sisters. Immigration is not an issue just for brown brothers and sisters. It's a moral issue, it's a spiritual issue. Same is true in terms of anti-Arab, anti-Jewish, whatever. So that in that sense, that coming together is very important. But in the coming together, we have to allow for difference, diversity, and disagreement. There's no authoritarian persons or no HNICs, no head Negroes in charge dictating what ought to be. This is the age of Ella Baker. You all know who the great Ella Baker was, executive director of SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, as well as executive director of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Ella Baker always accented grassroots organizing, was highly critical of the HNIC model, the Messianic model, the leader as Messiah, the head Negro in charge who either gets murdered or co-opted, and then the movement's in trouble. But if you have a variety of voices on the ground, even when one gets killed, and you mourn, or one sells their soul for a mess of pottage, and you're upset, you got a whole wave of voices. That's why Duke Ellington's band still sound like Duke even without Duke. Because it was a variety of voices. Sound better with Duke, don't get me wrong. But it still sound good. Because it wasn't just about him. It's about all those voices blending to generate a higher quality collective performance. That is democratic symbolic action.
I actually asked you this question in Ferguson when I gave you a hug.
Oh, yes. Are you wearing a bulletproof vest? I remember you did. I appreciate the care in that question, too. Lord,
So the question was, are you wearing a bulletproof vest?
No.
And his answer is?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. Oh, this is my fork. I carry my fork with me where I go, you know. That's part of my vanity I've been working with for 40 years.
I was like, you wearing a
bulletproof vest? No, this is 1972. Oh, how it plays.
That's really funny. Good question. Next question is, what role can media play in combating our deeply entrenched issues, including racism, militarization, and privatization? So some folks say we need our own media. Media is doing a bad job of it. What's the role of the media and how should they act?
Well, I think the first task is to always support so-called alternative. I'm talking about democracy now. Sister Amy has been so strong. The same is true with the journal's Black Agenda report of Brother Glenn Ford. I don't know if you all read that. You should make sure you, at least you're in dialogue with that, counterpunch, common dreams. And then you don't give up on mainstream media. You just always have to demystify what's going on in mainstream media. You can see the contradiction, you can see the hypocrisy, you can see the blindnesses.
Next question. We have a lot of questions.
No, that's good. I'm going to try to be real short.
No worries. So, talk about the environmental justice movement and how everything connects. I like that question.
Yeah, but it's hard to put that in a nutshell. Everything in a nutshell belongs in a nutshell too. So that no, I think when I talk about ecological catastrophe, I mean we know. You all know now. You all know Sister Klein's new book, Naomi Klein's book. This changes everything. This is a very, very important book because it makes a connection between critiques of capitalism, critiques of xenophobia, and critiques of ways of generating forms of growth that make it difficult for the earth to even survive in the next 50, 75 years. But the challenge, of course, is trying to make the connection in such a way that people feel as if what is coming at them most immediately is being addressed. Sometimes the ecological movement seems so abstract to persons. You have to be able to bring it home and talk about the way in which various kinds of toxic elements are shot through the poorest neighborhoods, the various ways in which corporate domination generates a kind of really not just mediocre food, but very dangerous food. So that that's the beginning of a discussion of trying to make something adoption. But I know a few years ago, Ben Chavis and then our dear brother Van Jones wrote some powerful texts on environmental racism, connecting struggles against racism with attempts to be a central part of the ecological movement to try to minimize these fossil fuels and so on. But that was not an answer to the question, that was just some words.
Okay, next question. I like this. This is important. How do you overcome rage and turn it into love?
You see, I think, one, it's a beautiful thing to be on fire, which means it's a beautiful thing to be full of moral outrage, holy anger, and righteous indignation. Part of the problem in America is too many folk are just so chilling. There's too many American people who have consciences that are coarsened and hearts that are hardened when it comes to black poor people and brown poor people. So being on fire is a very, very beautiful thing, but when you are on fire, then the challenge is going to be, is there a moral maturity and a spiritual depth to your rage? That's the fundamental question. And that's the question of what Martin King and others were wrestling with. And of course, the great Malcolm X was wrestling with this even more intensely at the end of his life. But you cannot do it alone. You have to be in context, groups, networks, infrastructure, organization. You cannot sustain your rage into compassion and love alone. It simply cannot be done. It's too difficult. You have to have faith. If you're blessed with family the way I was, that makes a big difference. Because my family was full of so much love and remained so, that if I tried to act like the devil, they would give me a love injection so quick. Remind me of where I come from. You know what I mean? But that's not true. A lot of people are not blessed with a family like that. So you need friends to give you that kind of wisdom, support, that love injection. Very much so. Y'all remember the song by the Isley Brothers, Caravan of Love? Isley, Jasper Isley. He was talking about the Black Freedom Movement. The Caravan of Love. The love train that Curtis Mayfield was singing about. People get ready. Don't need no ticket. But it takes a lot of courage to get on board. That's where the arts play a fundamental role. Arts are in no way ornamental or decorative. They are constitutive of any freedom fighter. They're at the core, at the center of any freedom fighter. Painting, architecture, music, whatever it is, so that your life becomes a work of art. Oh, yes. We giving a shout out to Donnell Williams. Is that who it is? Oh, you know what we're talking about. Exhibition A right there. Absolutely, Santa Cruz is blessed.
Jordan, next question. Can you explain the difference between an ally and a white savior?
Good God Almighty. We might want to open this up. Absolutely. But no, the white savior, of course, is the kind of condescending, paternalistic disposition. I'm coming in with the answer to provide you the benighted with the answer. And it's precisely that kind of arrogance that needs to be called into question, because the arrogance oftentimes is going hand in hand with indifference that we talked about before. An ally is someone who has equal status and you're working right alongside. It's very much like the difference between pity and compassion. You all know probably the greatest novel, the greatest play ever written. One of the greatest plays ever written in this country was written by an Irish brother. The name of the play was The Iceman Cometh by Eugene O'Neill. He spends so much time talking about the different forms of pity. Echoes William Blake's great poems that pity victimizes. Because if all you have is pity, when you're walking next to a precious homeless brother and sister, you're looking down on them and you feel good about yourself if you're giving them money. And they're the ones catching hell. Because you're on a higher plane than they are. You're looking down. That's pity. Pity victimizes. Whereas compassion puts you on the same level. So you ask the brother and sister who's homeless, why are you here? What is your situation? Where you come from? Well, I had a wonderful job 3 years ago, but my mother dropped dead, my father left, and my wife betrayed me, and it was too much at the same time. That kind of catastrophe I couldn't deal with. Lo and behold, became addicted, and now I'm on the corner. Now you're in different situations. And you're saying to yourself, I know the first thing I say to myself is, if just my mother passed, I don't know if I can deal with all three of those at the same time. Fully understand why you're on the corner. You're stronger than me. I was going to give you 10, take 20, I think. Take 40. And the 40 ain't got nothing to do with pity. It's got to do with I'm saluting you, given what you're going through. I'm walking around in much less catastrophe and still feeling as if maybe I can't make it through. You see, that's compassion. That's qualitatively different. And that's why in biblical scripture, of course, Jesus hates pity. But he loves the enactment of compassion. He loves it. That's true for Amos too.
Someone wants to know what happened after you were arrested, Ferguson.
Oh, well, one is I got a hole in my suit. In fact, that's why I got my patches now. I had to get my patches, put a hole in my suit, and we were dragged. We had some real tussling, and scuffling going on. And we were taken in. Now, once they took us in and they had a sense of who we were, and all of a sudden they wanted to treat us so nice. And not that we refused it, but we told the police and the head of police that you have got to ensure that you treat the young brothers and sisters exactly the way you're treating us, or we're not going to accept it. So that was a kind of challenge for them inside of the police department. Once we were, in the so-called paddock wagon. I know a lot of people don't like to use that word because it's hard on our Irish brothers and sisters. But I grew up, that's what we call it, a paddock wagon. It was pitch dark. And we were in there about 2.5 hours or so. And we just started singing songs. A lot of Motown. No.
So someone asked this question. I'm going to read it the way I think that they wrote it. They said, what do I say to those who tell me, don't be mad for the injustices, because if you are mad, you can't think rationally and act properly. But what if I have emotions too?
Oh, yeah. No, I think that we have to call into question this distinction between reflection and passion. There's a way of engaging in passionate reflection. There is such a thing as being mad with no thought. You don't want that. But there's nothing wrong with having passion and allowing that to lead toward deeper thoughts and allowing the thoughts to inform a deeper passion. So it's not an either or. I think that's a false dichotomy. One of the problems these days seems to me is that when I talk about people being smart, and there's a sense in which it's like being a smartphone. Smartphones really don't have passion, they just got a lot of calculation. You let the phone be smart, we be wise, compassionate, reflective, but also willing to sacrifice and serve. And therefore, again, this notion of, well, if you're mad, you're not going to be smart. Or are you saying that the smart ones are ones who lack passion? That's part of the problem. That's been part of the problem. Where is the moral passion when you're very, very, very smart, other than chasing dollars? It's like a Wu-Tang Clan. Cream, cream, cream. Can't lose everything around me. It had to rule me. Around me. It had to move me. I could try to be a person of integrity.
The next question is, what do you feel about the voting process and elections? So how does that need to change? Should people be participating in the election process? We just had a midterm election that drastically changed Congress. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, only
Especially for students.
38% of people, 36% of people even participate. I mean, I think voting can play a role, but it's just one element within a larger attempt to engage in transformation of society. And I do take very seriously what the great Emma Goldman used to say, which is if voting would result in the fundamental transformation of a country with the transfer of power from above to below, voting would be illegal. It would be illegal. All voting is within the context of choosing between mean-spirited Republicans, milquetoast Democrats. Those are the two parties. They are different, but not a whole lot different. And they all agree on Wall Street domination. They all agree on drones. They all agree on prison industrial complex up till now. So that voting can play a role, because it's true that the difference between Obama and McCain in regard to health care is very real. The difference between Obama and McCain in regard to drones, that's right. None at all. None at all.
Okay, here's a really good question. Well, they were all really good questions.
And that's true.
So here's a good question also. So how can someone who comes from immense white privilege work towards creating our own mythology, fighting the racist struggles already in place?
Well, one thing is, of course, recognize there is a history of highly white privileged brothers and sisters. Not a deep, extensive one, but there is a history of highly privileged white brothers and sisters who are in solidarity, become part of struggles for justice. So the question is, you hunt them out, read their biography. How did one of the Vanderbilts become a communist? How did one of the Rockefellers become a socialist? John Rockefeller III. You read their history. That happens. It's not a mass movement, but it does happen. I think the most important biography for white brothers and sisters to read is a book called The Long Haul by Miles Horton. Now, Miles Horton was the founder of Highlander Center, which was a center where a great freedom fighter named Rosa Parks came. She was there 3 months before she sat on the bus and wanted to stand up for justice. But it was a place in Tennessee where people came together, all races, to deal with struggles against white supremacy. You all know the song, We Shall Overcome? You see, Miles Horton's wife, the white sister, wrote that song. Peter Seeger, another towering white brother. Peter Seeger, white privilege. Paul Sweezy, one of the greatest Marxist economists ever in this country. White privilege. His father worked for J.P. Morgan. Dad, you're wrong. Get out the way. I'm for fundamental social change. Okay, Paul, I thought I taught you better than that, but all right. Inside of the family. Keep track of those kinds of figures if you're dealing with this issue of white privilege. Don't allow white privilege, as I said before, to in any way trap you and think that somehow you can't be a force for good. You're a human being and there's something inside of you that's always bigger than the class that you happen to be inhabiting based on choices not of your own making. Just like black folk who come from a context of black freedom, they can sell their souls for a mess of pottage. make their parents turn over in their grave. That's choice. That's a choice that people make. You see. So when we talk about human capacity for commitment, it's always going to be subject to the choices that we make.
This question asks, what is justice for Mike Brown?
There will never be justice for Mike Brown. Never. That's like asking for justice for all of the bones at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean as a result of the Atlantic slave trade. There'll never be justice. What we're calling for is accountability of people who kill people. A precious life, and that's true for any life, no matter what color. You can't bring it back. The tears of his mother never, ever fully consoled. But at least if there's accountability of the person who killed her son, she feels as if somebody cares that his life had value beyond what she knows the value was already. So in that sense, when I hear folk using that language, and I know in a way it's just metaphoric language, but I try to be very clear about that. You see, that I mean, let's just be honest about it. You know that when you really think of the catastrophe, every generation, over and over again, the pilage of it, over wasted. I've taught in prisons now for 37 years. Just finished my course at Rahway State Prison a couple of weeks ago. And I see all of the brothers, I got 150 brothers in my class on Friday night. And I see all of the brothers over and over again in that 15 years, 20, 25 years they in there. And then they let them out and say, oh, now you got justice. No, they ain't got no justice. The time is gone. It'll never come back. And that's just the peak of an iceberg in terms of the various scars and wounds and bruises on folk. You see. So in that sense, we have to just be honest about, lo and behold, these catastrophes can be so overwhelming. Let's just have some accountability to ensure it does not happen hereafter. But you can't go back. It's like that moment in Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov in his prose poem, The Grand Inquisitor, when that little precious baby is killed by the dog. Dostoevsky says that's a absurd in the universe. That's what makes it absurd. It's absurd in the universe. That baby can never, ever, ever be brought back. So there's no theoretical resolution to the problem of evil in regard to that baby, even if you come up with the most symmetric philosophical resolution in the world. In terms of that baby's gone. It's absurd in the world. It's a hole in the universe. And yet you can do all you can that subsequent babies aren't killed.
What role does public education play in our social conditions today? What needs to happen in education to change our conditions?
Ooh, yes. Is that your question too, my dear sister? I made a brief allusion to the soul murder that takes place in these disgraceful public educational systems. And what I mean by that, I mean Diane Ravitch reminds us rich kids get taught, poor kids get tested. What do I mean by that? Well, in the last 25 years or so, testing has become the fundamental criteria to evaluate both the children's achievement as well as teachers now. And what test they use, of course, is always problematic, but the degree to which you can have a public educational system with kids coming in first is militarized because they got to go through security, just like the airport I got to go through tomorrow morning. Then when you get in there, do you really have teachers and administrators who care? Well, yes, you got some, but some of them starting to give up, just there for the money. Some of them are already looking at the black kids, especially the young black brothers, as criminals before they've even committed any possible crimes. Then, as I said before, no arts programs. What's going to pique their imagination, their critical intelligence? It's going to be routine. Now, education is about what? Learning how to die. You learn how to die by killing inside of you the prejudice, the presupposition, the cowardice, the conformity, so that you can become a more compassionate, critical, and loving human being. You're reborn. No rebirth without death. You got to learn how to die in order to be reborn in an educational process. How does that take place in a context in public education where the militarizing and the lack of arts and not enough care and concern? And then too many administrators obsessed with careerism, which is the case for most of the employment sites in the country. So vocation drops out. It's all about profession. The calling drops out. It's all about career. Sense of having a desirable livelihood in the world drops out, and it's just about the job. You see, and the precious children suffer, and their souls suffocate. And this is, I think, one of the real crimes against humanity in terms of that kind of soul murder that you see. So many precious young folk. We've had tremendous struggles in Harlem over this in terms of privatizing public education, shutting down public schools. I think Philadelphia's had over 50. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I have 3 more questions
Sure.
and 10 more minutes.
That's cool. That's cool. We want to save time for your comments. Yeah.
I just have resources to give you, but I'll do that.
Okay.
Can blackness exist without whiteness? It's an interesting question about race, ethnicity,
Yes.
color, colorblind.
Absolutely. And it's true that all of these categories are parasitic on the emergence of white supremacist ideology in early modern Europe to attempt to not just exploit labor, but also to dishonor bodies, especially dark bodies. So it's not just whiteness and blackness, but it's also brownness, it's also redness, and also yellowness. And we know these are all constructs. We know that these are all highly arbitrary in many ways, but they became so institutionalized, they became so legalized that they shaped lived experience. And so to be a black person is something that is lived because you are in the back of the Jim Crow bus, and if you went to the front, you're going to get your head busted. Tiger Woods running around telling everybody he's Cabalasian. Say, okay, everybody ought to have some right to define themselves, but then he got 150 letters saying we're going to put a bullet in your nigger brain as soon as you step on the green. He said, oh, I'm blacker than I thought now. Because the context helped shape who he was. You see. And that's in relation to white supremacist reaction to this highly talented brother. He's not highly talented, he was the best at the time. He's had problems since then. So that they are parasitic, but the crucial thing is to understand that they're all on the human spectrum. See, the problem of the categories is that it was done within the context of white supremacy, so it was hierarchical. So the people would say, well, so-and-so's human. Oh, so-and-so's black. Added something on. Or you take it this way. You can still see the New York Times today. Somebody says, oh, this is a play about the human condition. Then you know it's white folk right. Oh, this is a play about identity. Oh, they're talking about Sister Hernandez. They're talking about Letitia. You see, like Eugene O'Neill writes about Irish, but he's talking about the human condition. Toni Morrison's talking about black folk. She's talking about identity, the black experience. No, Toni Morrison's talking about the human condition through the lens of precious black folk. Eugene O'Neill's talking about the human condition through the lens of precious Irish folk. So that we have to understand that human condition, that human spectrum cuts across the board, but it's hard to keep track of that human spectrum given the ways in which whiteness and blackness as categories have been constructed within the backdrop of a white supremacist framework.
Speaking of white supremacy, what do you think about white supremacists using black-on-black violence to kill black people?
To kill black people?
I know, to talk about black people, to put black people down themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
To kill.
Exactly. No. I mean, what's fascinating is that 93% of precious white brothers and sisters, when they kill somebody, they kill white folk. So there's not a lot of talk about white-on-white violence. Black folk, over 90% of precious black folk killing somebody, kill black folk. But it's all black-on-black violence. Why? Because, again, we live in a culture of mass distraction. somehow we can distract the discourse in such a way that it doesn't allow us to be the object of the critique. It's just black folk killing black folk. Everybody knows black folk been killing black folk for a long time. It's wrong, it's cowardly. It's part of the white supremacy inside the black people. It doesn't have to have white folk around for white supremacy to be operating in black people. We've internalized it in a deep way. Too many black people really believe they have the wrong hips and lips and noses and hair texture and skin pigmentation. Too many black people still believe they're less beautiful and less moral and less intelligent. Why? Because you got 400 years of white supremacy trying to convince you of that. How many black folk can greenlight a film in Hollywood? 2014, anybody know? 0. You got to go to Atlanta and go see Medea, brother. Brother Tyler. I support the brother. He's successful, but I told him, I applaud your success. What are you faithful to, brother? You going to be doing Medea 23, 30 years from now? Come on, brother. Which means what? White supremacist stereotypes reinforced over and over and over again coming out of Hollywood. Back to King Kong, back to Gone with the Wind almost sometimes. There's a long tradition of dishonoring black people coming out of Hollywood. That's highly influential in terms of the media, you see. No doubt, no doubt. So that, yes, it's true that black folk often we disrespect each other, we dishonor each other, we kill each other, and so forth and so on. And it's wrong, and we should never deny the truth. You got to point that out. But you have to put it in the right context so it doesn't trivialize the degree to which black folks still are up against a terrorist state when it comes to raw police brutality or arbitrary police power. I do believe there is such a thing as fair policing. And we talked about this in the dialogue with the with the group. Yeah, didn't we talk about this, didn't we? Absolutely. We're not demonizing police. We're not saying the police somehow are inherently evil or anything. We just want fair policing, protection and service, rather than contempt and disrespect.
So I got about 20 of the same question.
Oh, was that right?
Yes. And the question's around a couple of things. I mentioned earlier, yesterday, the UC Regents, and even today, they passed their budget, increased these students' tuition by 27%. Y'all didn't sound too upset about that, but that's fine. And they're highly upset. And we know, as you talked about earlier, you talked about financialize, privatize, and militarize, and how that's a theme of America and how it's coming out. And it's physically, we've seen it now on a day-to-day basis, attacking these students in the room. Also, I graduated with $29,000 in student loan debt, et cetera, et cetera. So can you talk about that aspect of the organizing that these students in the room are doing? There's an occupation happening right now in humanities. And what sort of thoughts do you have towards what they should be doing next?
Well, one is, I think, it's very clear that the warped priorities of those who rule us results in $2.7 trillion of money offshore the tax system can't get to. It results in the Federal Reserve giving nearly 0% interest rates for big banks for 3.5 years. Now, if students can have that kind of interest rate that the banks have, you'd have a very different kind of experience in your education. Now, does that mean then, given these war priorities, that the future of the nation depends more on high levels of bank and financial capitals, access to resources, as opposed to the vast majority of people who constitute the citizenry, the students? Public life, secondary. Private profit, primary. That's part of what I mean by neoliberal capitalist regime. So what do? You got to bear witness. You have to bear witness. You say, wait a minute, why is it that when it comes to resources for education, things get so tight? But when it comes to war and prisons, cash gets flowing. more priorities. That's the reason why what the brothers and sisters are doing there in the humanities, is it humanities? Humanities Hall, is so very important. You have to bear witness. And it's not just a matter of whether you win or not. It's a matter of what kind of human being you choose to be in your short trek from your mama's womb to tomb. What kind of praxis will you enact and embody alongside others? That's one of the main reasons why I can't wait to get there and give those folk a hug and tell them that I'm in deep solidarity.
Dr. Cornel West, one huge round of applause. Thank you, Dr. West. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And of course, a huge thank you to Engaging Education, Student Media, and AFSA. I'm not going to hold you long, I swear. We have to be out of here in 3 minutes, so I'm going to give you a couple of resources. If you have your cell phone or a piece of paper and pen, pull it out. Because being able to do action at humanities is awesome. But when you all are able to connect it to a national discourse that's taking place with other students and other young leaders across the country, it helps add to the justice that we're fighting for. The first resource is, there's a website that's actually active now. It used to be called FergusonOctober.org. Now it's called FergusonAction.org. If you sign up to this website, you can even Google Ferguson Action. It is a blog that allows people across the country and even the world to put up actions that are happening in the areas near you. We do not know when the verdict will come out yet. I thought it was going to happen today. It might happen tomorrow. Rumors are it's going to happen on Saturday. You all should be aware and awake when this happens. But know that on this website, every single source that you're going to look at will tell you the next day what's going to happen. So we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know when it's going to launch. But if you look at this website, it will tell you in the city that you are in. If you type in your zip code, you sign up for the text message alerts, what you're doing the next day, where they're going to be, who the targets are, what the actions are, where they're going to be at. So you all would want to use that here in Santa Cruz because it's going to be in Oakland, Berkeley, here in Santa Cruz, San Jose, so on and so forth. The other website is called freedomside.org. I'm one of the co-chairs for a national network with the Dream Defenders, with Black Youth Project, with United We Dream, with some other organizations like USSA, UCSA, so on and so forth. And we have conference calls daily that you can sign up for on the website. Freedomside.org is the website. You can also follow us on Twitter. And we have rapid responses, not just what's happening with Ferguson, but also the issue I talked about earlier with what happened in Mexico, the immigration executive order that just came out. Higher Education Act is coming out this week also. You all should be highly aware of that because you are in higher ed. Your student debt is affected. The interest rates are affected by HEA. So you should be rightly aware of what's going on with that, and that all is updated on their website. The other thing is, Dr. West mentioned a friend of mine, TEFPO. So if you haven't heard of him, TEF space POE. He's a phenomenal artist in Ferguson who's been there and been an artist for a very long time. But some of the resources and literature and songs and books that Dr. West is talking about come from him, and I want you all to look him up and follow him on Twitter. So those are my 3 things. I thought I'd give you something as opposed to telling you something. I hope that you all take that. Have a fantastic evening. Can we give one more round of applause to Dr. West? Y'all gonna say?
Got your back!
Holla back!
I got your back!
Holla back!
I got your back!
Holla back!
I got your back!
We actually want to take this time to thank Tiffany and to thank Dr. Cornel West for coming all the way out here to Santa Cruz, from driving through the 17 when it's raining. We just want to say that as students, sometimes we don't get this opportunity a lot to have someone like Cornel West as well as Tiffany to have honest conversations with us. But we really want to encourage y'all that what you learn here to take it out of the space and to just encourage to have informed action. So please talk with your friends about it, what you learned here, as well as with your family. Thank you to our volunteers. Thank you so much. Ensayo and Union, thank you. All right, thank you, everyone.
Down the last minute of space right now.